Hey guys, welcome to this episode of alpha-tec Talks. I'm Noel, and with me in studio today is Michael van Rensburg.
Good morning again.
Thanks for joining us again, Mike. Good to have you.
Good.
Nice. So for this episode, guys, we're going to be discussing beyerdynamic headphones and the technologies that go into these headphones. Welcome to the show, Mike.
No, thank you.
So beyerdynamic has been around for quite some time, almost 100 years.
Yeah.
What has made beyerdynamic so successful?
Well, yeah, the company I think formed in 1924 or 1924 if I remember correctly. So a very long time ago by Jürgen Beyer. And the company's been engineering new technologies and developing new principles and new products throughout their life cycle. And lots of those products are synonymous these days still with the high quality that Bayer's been known for. And everything from headphones to microphones to conferencing systems to Bluetooth now on the headphones, wireless systems, they just keep on developing and bringing out new products all the time.
Oh, excellent. Excellent.
Yeah. And they basically, it's engineering company that has a passion for what they do. And it's made them very successful over the years.
Nice. Yeah. Well, I'm glad that we distribute Bayer. So let's get into it, Mike. I have a couple of burning questions to ask you. Okay, so we all know that there are different types of headphones on the market, which can be categorized into sort of three categories. We have the in-ear variant, the on-ear variant, and the over-ear variant. So why do we have these different types?
Yeah, so it's basically different people sort of prefers it differently, and certain applications you also want to maybe not have an obtrusive headphone visible, right? So if we start off with something, so we brought a couple of examples out, but something like an in-ear headphone that actually sits inside your ear canal.
Yes.
You can get those in different variations and different colors and things as well, but let's say it's an on-camera scenario and you don't actually want to see it. It can be an in-ear headphone in that sense, being an in-ear monitor headphone, and you can talk back to that person, and it can be hidden in a hairline, cables can be hidden, and it can be a flesh color, so it's like neatly concealed in the person's ear, so it's not necessarily something that's visible that there's a headphone in place. Or just in terms of consumer sides, in-ear headphones, people prefer to walk with earbuds instead of having a bigger, larger headphone over their ears. So that's your sort of in-ear, which means it's inside your ear canal, right?
Yes.
Then you get the on-ear, which is something similar like the Aventos here or the DT240 Pros, where it actually sits on your ear lobe.
Yes.
Right?
So it doesn't cover it or anything like that?
No, just sits right on top of your earlobe.
Okay. And
some people prefer that. They prefer to have it on their ear instead of over their ears, which is something similar to the ones at the back here, which is also referred to as circumaural.
Oh, right.
Right? And there's a couple of different things here that happen. So an in-ear headphone would seal inside your ear canal. So you can block out external noise in that way as well.
Oh, right. Okay. So you're not sort of aware of what's happening around you environmentally kind of thing. Okay.
An in-ear headphone, an on-ear headphone would sit on top of your ear and not necessarily seal completely.
Yes.
And then a circumaural headphone would actually seal right around your eardrum or your ear lobe, and actually seal your ear or your hearing off from external factors.
Okay.
And it can prevent some bleeding and things that could happen on the headphones as well.
Okay, interesting. So to basically sum it all up, it's pretty much just a matter of choice, right?
To some extent, choice and application. So it depends on the application. Like we mentioned, in-ears, for instance, on performance stages, that's unobtrusive. You don't necessarily want to be running around with a big set of headphones that actually falls off your head if you're an artist and you're listening to your monitors on your ears.
Oh yes, that would make perfect sense.
So application and sort of personal preference to some extent. If it's a home user, then personal preference. Maybe you don't like in ears and you want to rather have something circumaural or on ear. Then that's a choice in that side.
Awesome. That's actually very interesting. So one of my main burning questions to ask you, Mike, is what is impedance and ohms? Okay, I see that these are pretty much listed on the boxes, like in the case of a DT770, we've got them in the 32 ohm and the 80 ohm and a 250 ohm. Correct. So what does all that mean?
Yeah. So if you think about what a headphone is, it works the same as a loudspeaker, right? So it's a transducer, which is the sort of technical term for them.
Right.
And that implies that it has a coil, a copper coil. And as soon as you start winding the coil, you start, or lengthening the wire distance, you start getting more or less resistance, right?
Okay.
So resistance means you struggle to push voltage through it, right? Because it's resisting the push of electrons and things.
Impeding the voltage.
100%.
Okay,
right?
that makes sense, right?
So
Got
that's
it.
sort of the sort of a layman's technical view at it. But what it means is that if you have a high impedance headphone that's 250 or 600 watts, you need high voltage to drive it. Right?
Okay.
And I'm not talking high voltage, we're just talking you need a decent amount of voltage to drive it.
Okay.
If you have a 32 ohm or an 80 ohm headphone, or even a 16 ohm headphone that some of the in-ears are, then you don't need high power to drive it. And there also it now starts becoming application based.
Right.
So,
okay.
An in-ear headphone or something like the DT240s here, which is a 34 ohm headphone, they can be driven by tablets, phones, laptops, something that's battery operated, much more easily than something like the T1, which is a high-end headphone that's 600 ohms. So
Wow. 600 ohm.
yeah, so it's all to do with the amount of voltage you can drive the headphone with,
Okay.
right? And in turn, that would also it means that the driver can move more, and the more it can move, the higher the SPL is that it can produce.
Oh,
So it's
okay.
all related to the volume of the headphone versus what you're driving it with.
Right.
So if you're driving it with a laptop or a phone, and it's a high impedance headphone, 600 ohms, then you're going to struggle to get decent or high level SPL out of the headphone. But if it's a 32 ohm or a 16 ohm headphone, you're driving on your phone, tablets, Walkman for that matter. If you still use Walkmans these days, CD Walkmans and things like that.
I remember those.
Yeah, you can then drive it more efficiently. Should be the right term, which means that the headphone can perform at what its designed criteria is.
So it doesn't need as much power to get the speakers to work.
Correct.
Oh,
Correct.
okay. Finally, I know what that is now.
Yeah.
Awesome. That is fantastic. So I'd like to ask you also a difference between open and closed headphones. Okay. So I hear that all the time. So what is the difference between an open headphone and a closed headphone?
So you would generally not get that necessarily open-closed sort of backings on ear and in ear.
Okay.
They are pretty much a closed back generally type headphone.
All right.
But with something like the circumaural, so we've got a whole range here behind us. You can start off looking at something like the DT770s, and you get them in a pro version and a consumer version.
Right.
That is a closed back headphone, which means that when you place it over your ears, it is sealing around your ear, and it is closing any leakage of sound out, and it prevents a certain amount of noise in. Right?
Oh, right. Okay.
So it blocks the sound from the headphone out and sound from external environmental factors into your listening experience. Right?
Awesome. Okay.
A semi-open headphone means it is capable of bleeding some information out and allowing some information in. Right? Something like the DT880 editions here, which is the consumer version. You'll see there's a bit of an indication here of little holes. I don't know if you guys can see that neatly on the camera, but this will allow a certain amount of information in and a certain amount of information out, right? So it is semi-open.
Okay.
And then you get something like the T1s or the DT990s there, all still circumaural, so they seal around your ear lobes, but they are full open, which means environmental noise in and out is not a factor. It doesn't get blocked at all from what bleeds out of the headphone and what comes into the headphone.
Okay, so now I'm going to ask you a question with regards to that. So if the sound is going to leak out and you're going to hear sound coming in, what is the purpose of that?
So it depends on what you're busy doing, right? So let's take a typical example. I'm in the studio, I use my DT770s to monitor the audio with,
Okay.
or I'm standing as an engineer behind the desk, I can monitor it that way, or I can be the artist busy recording. I don't necessarily want what I'm listening to when I'm busy recording to bleed into the microphone.
Okay.
So in that case, you would use a sealed headphone, that seals around your ears and seals its noise from leaking out as best as possible. So you can prevent bleeding of additional sound or additional noise into your microphone, right? Similarly, if you were sitting at home and you were listening at home, you might not want to have environmental factors affect your listening experience.
Yes.
Right? So again, it's application based and to some extent personal preference. But something like a semi-open headphone or a full open headphone where it's bleeding its sound out or some of its sound out and allowing some sound in, you can also get rid of the feeling of enclosedness that you would get from listening to a closed back headphone, which means your sound stage, as we call it, your listening experience becomes more open. It sounds more spacious, and you're not closed off from your environment.
Yes, okay.
Right.
So it gives it sort of like a more natural sounding type of sound?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. I actually didn't know that. Okay. So I also want to ask a question in relation to SPL. How does impedance relate to SPL?
Well, that's what we were talking about earlier. So you can drive your headphones louder, or you can drive them more efficient, which means they'll reach their designed SPL better if you've matched them to your source. So
Okay.
a 32 ohm being driven from a tablet would drive efficiently, but a 600 ohm being driven from a tablet or a phone won't drive efficiently. So you won't be able to reach its maximum SPLs that it's designed to be able to reach.
Okay.
But if you take something like a T1 or a DT990 250 or 600 ohm system and you drive that from a headphone amplifier, then you are driving the headphone efficiently and you're better matching the impedance to the source device, getting maximum experience from the headphones. Everything from your dynamic range to your voltages that the system is driving with, which matches then your SPLs that it's capable of achieving.
Okay, so just to wrap that up, so if I have a 600 ohm headphone, it is sort of mandatory, I would say, that you have a headphone amplifier for that.
Yes and no. So if it's a consumer-based product, we would recommend a headphone amp for it, either a DAC, a digital audio converter, or if you have an AV receiver that's capable of driving headphones efficiently, you can use that. But in a pro environment, you don't necessarily need a headphone amp, depending on what you're doing. So if you're a pro mixing engineer, or a pro environment, you're a mixing engineer, you use a 770 Pro or even a 990 Pro, then your mixing desk will be able to drive that headphone efficiently.
Okay, so it's made for that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So between 80 and 250 ohm systems, that's generally made for that professional environment. 600 ohms generally home listening, where you're matching it to a good source device like a digital audio converter or a headphone amp with a DAC in it, whatever the case may be. And then your mobile use systems are 32 ohms and lower.
Interesting. Very, very nice there. So when we're looking at a pair of headphones, okay, they always state what the frequency response is on those headphones. How important is frequency response?
Well, again, it's going to depend on what you're busy doing, right? So if you are a receptionist, do you need to have full frequency response if you're answering a telephone call on a headphone with a mic, right? So a little
I don't
headset.
think so.
So frequency response in that case needs to be speech, and we've spoken previously on other episodes about speech frequencies and so on. So that type of headset, headset meaning it's got a mic with it, the headphone part, the speaker part, doesn't need to have full frequency bandwidth. Right? So it doesn't need to reach 20 to 20, which your hearing can achieve. But at the same time, if you are listening to high fidelity music at home on something like a T1, which is a premium headphone designed for home use, you're listening to music. So you want to have full production capability, reproduction capability of full frequency bandwidth. So a lot of Beyer's headphones are, in general terms, around 5 hertz to 35,000 hertz. Right now, we would say, okay, but hang on, but that's way past my hearing, right? But again, if you're talking about an environment where you're listening to high fidelity and you're really wanting to get the best experience from what you're listening to, that higher frequency range just opens up the soundstage. It opens up the intelligibility of the music that was recorded or the performance that was recorded when you are re-listening to that at home. So higher premium style headphones actually has a very, very large, sometimes up to 40,000 hertz or 40 kilohertz frequency spectrum.
Sure, that's quite big.
That they can reproduce, right? And to some extent, they can produce very high frequencies in that sense, so 20, 30, 40,000 hertz, because of the driver size. So driver size obviously depicts how quickly the driver can move in terms of being able to reproduce quicker waves. If you think about it from a technical term, your sine waves and things.
Okay.
So a headphone can generally, more than a loudspeaker, a big loudspeaker, achieve very much higher frequencies. And like as we hear, sometimes double to what we would do on a performance system, which is generally 20 to 20 hertz frequency range.
Oh, interesting. Very, very, very nice. Thank you, Michael. So on a couple of the beyerdynamic boxes, I've also had a look at a small yellow logo that's placed on the box that says high-res audio. So what is that about?
So that's sort of what we were touching on now, where a headphone system is capable of producing, or an audio system, that we talk specifically headphones, but an audio system will get the high-res logo if that system is capable of producing 40,000 hertz with a frequency bandwidth, right? And it's able to reproduce that very accurately. And that makes for good listening quality. So again, something like the T1s, and I don't know if anybody would be able to see it, but there's a little logo there on the T1 that says high-res audio. Yep. And these Aventos here in front of me here, if I just flip these around, you'll see there's a little logo on the side here as well that also says little yellow logo.
Yes,
that
correct.
says high-res audio. Right?
Yeah.
So they are designed with that big frequency spectrum in mind, which means they match to that criteria for being able to achieve high-res audio. And it doesn't necessarily mean that other audio systems are not good. It just means these are capable of producing really high or large frequency bandwidth. Like I mentioned, up to about 40,000 hertz, which is quite a bit.
That is quite a bit, Mike. So does Beyer have a technology that allows them to achieve this high-res audio?
Yeah, they do. So both these headphones that we're using here as just examples, the T1 and the Aventos, they fall into a headphone class that Beyer has developed called Tesla technology. So that forms part of their Tesla headphone series.
Right, okay.
And essentially, so for the science dudes out there, the science guys out there that understands the word Tesla, Tesla was Nikola Tesla. It's named after Nikola Tesla.
Interesting.
Which was the guy that sort of founded and developed AC currents and things. He's pretty much responsible for a lot of what we use today. Lights are on, things are working. It's sort of his influence, right? So he also defined magnetic field strength. And the Beyer headphones that are in the Tesla driver technologies, they have a magnetic field strength inside the air gaps. For the guys that do understand how a magnet and a headphone works, the headphone basically sits inside a magnetic field, positive, negative magnetic field, or north and south magnetic field. And that air gap, the amount of magnetic field strength in the air gap, in this case, reaches higher than 1 Tesla. So on average, Beyer's Tesla drivers are around 1.2 Tesla of magnetic field strength. And that then allows for a better motion of the driver, better control over what the driver does. Right?
Okay, yes.
It's performance, essentially, which is also part of being able to produce that high-res audio.
Okay,
And that's why they have that as a separate category. So let's call them non-Tesla drivers from Beyer is normally around 0.6 Tesla, and the Tesla drivers around 1.2 Tesla.
Wow, that is very interesting, Mike.
Yeah.
That is really interesting. So, I have a burning question for you now, right? So, when I purchase a new set of Beyer headphones, do I have to burn them in?
No, not really. Not really. You can essentially pick them up and enjoy them immediately. like anything in life, if you do want to just take it slowly, you can, but it won't cause any harm, long-term damage, or short-term damage if you just start listening to them normally, immediately out of the box, so to speak. But like anything, and headphones are not necessarily that susceptible to it, but over time there could be a perceived audio loss, right? And that could be from various things. It could be maybe it's a very hot day and the driver is getting a little bit warmer than normal. Maybe there's a bit of reduction in NSPL, but I mean it will be very negligible. But if you're listening for 3-4 hours to your headphones, your ears are also going to get fatigued.
Yes, yes, they will.
So there's certain things there that might be involved. But in terms of the headphones, just being able to be turned on, no, perfectly fine.
So plug and play right out of the box. Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So also another burning question. Looking at the beyerdynamic ones, you've got standard and professional headphones. So what makes the professional headphones differ from the standard ones?
Yeah. Quite a few things, to be honest.
Okay.
If you think about the audio capability of the systems, they're pretty much the same. They're very close to each other. The changes between pro and consumer, or the things that differentiates the two in terms of the Bayer product line, is where you would hear a bit of a difference in how the drivers perform.
Okay.
But they're very close to the same tonal balance, right? From the raw product, the two drivers. But there's a couple of factors. So again, when you're sitting on your couch in your home and you're listening to a set of T1s, are you jumping around? Are you moving around a lot?
No.
No, right? So do you have to exert so much force on your head that actually becomes uncomfortable?
Well, I don't think you should.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's one area where a pro and a consumer headphone differ. It's the amount of force that the headphone band is actually applying to your skull,
Okay.
right, to your ears. In a pro environment, if you're a mixing engineer, you're sitting behind a desk, or you in a live show and you're behind a desk, you're moving around, right? You're not necessarily standing still.
Yes.
So you don't want to be able to turn your head all of a sudden and then the headphones come off your head.
Oh, that's happened to
Right.
me before.
So,
I can totally relate.
Something like a DT770 Pro used in that environment has got a higher headband pressure. So it fits more snugly. But it also means that if you're listening over a long period of time, or you're using them continuously over a long period of time, it might exert a little bit more force on your head than might be comfortable, like I say, over time.
Okay.
And that's sort of a big difference. So when you're listening to music at home, you might want to listen over a long period of time. So there's more wearing comfort in the design of the headband pressure, even down to the actual ear cups, right? The materials that they're made of and how they're constructed. There's a couple of things there involved as well. I can't necessarily take a 770 Pro ear cushion and put it on a 770 edition because they're designed slightly differently. Again, for that wearing comfort and longevity, and the 770 Pro isolates a little bit more than what the 770 edition would in terms of bleed out, and that's all some things that are designed in the ear cups and the actual sponges of the ear cushions. So there's a couple of that kind of stuff. So it's to do with the robustness, to do with the wearing comfort, how it fits, how you're using it, what applications you're using it for. Some other things could be a coiled cable to a straight cable, right? So typical broadcast environment, DT200 series, DT250s and so on that's used in broadcast, they all come with a coiled cable. So when I'm close to where the headphone is plugged in, I don't want this long cable lying on the ground.
No, you're going to trip over it.
But when I take my chair and I want to push it away half a meter or a meter, the cable must also not restrict me from being able to move. So in that case, a coiled cable is used in a professional environment where the headphone is then, again, making it easier for you to work. But if you're sitting at home, you don't necessarily want a coiled cable. So in that case, you might have a straight cable on a consumer headphone that is not necessarily with the coiling in it.
That's actually very interesting, Mike. So I didn't mean to interject there, but it's very interesting that Bayer knows exactly what to put with the headphones. So they'll know that they've got a home headphone and it's not going to be a coiled cable. It's looser on the head. so you can have more listening enjoyment. Where, you know, like you said, with the sound engineer, you need something that fits, that you can move your head all the time.
Yeah.
That's actually really clever of Bayer to think these things up. So I think that's probably what's added to their success.
Yeah.
You know, over the length of time that they've been around, is probably because they've got an exceptional range of purpose-built headphones designed specifically for specific tasks.
Correct. And maybe something else to touch on is the not the build quality as such. I don't mean it build quality as in pro is better than consumer in that sense, but maybe say differently, the assembly, right?
Right.
Most of the Bayer headphones, if you look at the DT range, DT 770, 880, 990s and so on, DT 100s, DT 200s, I can pretty much, when you look at the headphone, replace any single part in that headphone.
Right.
So when it comes to longevity of the headphone and being able to use that headphone over a long period of time, I can repair or replace individual parts or groups of parts, depending on what area I want to repair.
That is pretty cool.
So that also comes in when you look at a pro and a consumer headphone.
Okay.
Something like the DT240s, I mean, that's a solid headband.
Yes.
So should something go wrong, you replace the entire headband. In that case, instead of being able to replace just the cushion over the headband,
Yes.
or just the headband steel, or just the cup that holds the headphone in place. I can maybe just pull this set out here. This is my DT770 Pro 32s that I've been using for, I don't know, probably a good 6-7 years now. And you won't be able to see it on camera, but they're getting a little bit long in the tooth now. So I need to, or I can now do a few things. So the headband is still fine.
Right.
But I can remove the ear cups, and I can just replace my ear cups, and pretty much the headphones would be good to go again for another 5 years without any issues.
So that is a user serviceable part, or do they have to bring it into?
No, it's user serviceable.
Okay, so any guy off the street can simply buy a set of cushions and take them off and replace.
This literally just pulls off.
Check
fairly
that,
quickly.
guys.
I don't know if you guys will be able to see it, but it just pulls off really quickly. And then you just refit a new set, buy a new set and refit them.
Good to go.
You know, something like this might break, or that piece there might break, or something happens and I want to replace any parts. I can replace other groups of parts or individual parts.
Wow, that is seriously
depending
cool.
on what you want to do. So some of the consumer headphones from Bayer is the same way. Like I say, if it's a 770 Pro or a 770 consumer, they construct in the same way. So even the 770 consumers, there's certain aspects you can just quickly change and fix.
How cool is that? That is seriously cool.
That's sort of another area of pro versus consumer differences.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, but again, looking at something like the T1s, same scenario. It's a premium, really premium headphone, so that's also serviceable to finer details and individual parts. So yeah, there's good and good and bad things, and it depends on what your usability is.
That's very interesting. I actually didn't know that about Bayer, but I do now. Yeah. And guys, seriously, these Bayer T1s, oh my gosh, you have to have a listen. They are incredible. Like, I listened to them for the first time just now, and I was blown away. Like, I'm going to play with them for the weekend if I can get them. So, talking about longevity, Mike, Michael actually has a pair of beyerdynamic DT48 headphones, which have been around for how long?
Well, the original ones, and we made a quick little slide here, which I'll put up in a moment. But the DT48 was, as far as I understand, one of the first products that Bayer produced at a consumer level, or and I don't mean consumer as in retail, but it was consumed as headphones by various industries in various places.
Okay.
And for a very long time. So the original DT48 came out in 1937.
Sure.
And they were essentially produced until the announcements of the discontinuation in 2012. So they pretty much produced until early 2013. And the only reason for the discontinuation is because they could not find the material anymore to manufacture the driver diaphragm from.
So sad.
And that, in saying that, so suggestively saying that from 1937, and this is fact, from 1937 up until 2013, the drivers of the DT48 series was the same. the driver is the same driver that was produced 1937 to 2013 or 2012.
That's amazing.
And the only things that changed, as you can see there, was some of the outward aesthetics of the drivers. So you were talking about that now. I was lucky enough to
check it out.
be able to source myself a set of DT48s when we initially started with Bayer. And yeah, I keep these hidden and locked up.
I would as well.
Because, and yeah, they sound incredible. They absolutely sound incredible. I'll let you listen to them a little bit earlier. And they were designed as a engineering headphone. So they are pretty much raw, true to what you are inputting into the headphone is what the headphone would output. So they do very little coloration of sound. And they were used in broadcasts extensively over that period as true reference headphones.
And that they are, guys, really. When you play music or anything through those headphones, it is tonally flat. It is unreal how they got that headphone to sound like that. It is, I don't even know how they did it, but it's beautiful, it's flat, and it's, I wish they hadn't discontinued them, seriously.
So yeah. But yeah, like I say, they've probably one of the longest production consumer products. They've continuously produced consumer products.
Bayer, bring them back.
So yeah.
So you've pretty much got one of the longest running headphones that Beyerdynamic has ever manufactured.
Yeah, and like I say, I keep them locked up.
Oh, you're very lucky, Mike. You better keep those things locked up.
Yeah, especially from you now.
Yes, from me. Right, guys, that brings us to the end of this episode of alpha-tec Talks. Thank you very much for joining us today, where we could showcase the Beyerdynamic headphones and the technologies involved. As usual, guys, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That way you never miss out on any content that comes up. And please head over to our website, www.alpha-tec.co.za. Click on the training tab, and there you'll find a whole host of videos that you can watch at your leisure. Thank you for joining us today, guys. Michael, thank you very much. Thank you for bringing the DT48s through.
Pleasure.
What an absolute pleasure to see them. Thanks for being on the show again today, Michael.
Good. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
See you next time.
See you soon.